the Raiders shook off the Antonio Brown madness and took care of the Denver Broncos with virtual ease. Michael Silver, my compadre from the NFL Media Group, wrote a great piece on NFL.com, and he adds a little bit of voice to that. How are you, Mike?
Great, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing well. What was it like in that locker room after the game last night in Oakland?
You know, I think there was just a general sense of relief in that organization, and specifically when it came to Derek Carr. He just told me, look, I'm so glad it's over. And he said, I don't want to make it sound like I'm crushing Antonio Brown as a person, but, you know, it was a lot. And he came out pregame looking more fiery than I'd ever seen him, just, you know, kind of like staring through people, went out in the field and then played like it from the start. And, you know, this is the Derek Carr we saw in 2016, well protected, had a running game to go to, throwing with authority, making quick decisions, and, you know, doing big things in Oakland.
So Carr is a sigh of relief there a little bit. What did happen, Michael, that caused Antonio Brown to celebrate getting released there? Because you look at this team, and as Carr said after the game, it would have been incredible to have him as the one receiver. Tyrell Williams looked like a one receiver. He could have been number two, like the Juju Smith-Schuster in a way. What happened to have him celebrate that?
Well, I think one problem is that we keep talking about this as though Antonio Brown is rational and is making decisions in his best interest, like you or I would try to do, or most people. And I'm concerned. I obviously am not a mental health professional, but I've talked to enough people who've known him and know him and have been around him that this may be bigger than football. It's either that or he's one of the great con artists of our time. But even then, if this was some grand plan to get out of Oakland and get to New England, I don't get that either. You're going from a place where they let you do a lot of things and let you get away with a lot of things before finally saying enough, to a place where clearly they're not going to do that. And again, that makes no sense to me either. But I just think this is a guy who has reached a point in the last few months where he's spiraled to the place that if you tell him he has to do something, he's not only defiant, but blurting out his defiance on social media. He's hypersensitive, and he's very, very unpredictable. And I will say this. You know, John Gruden, Mike Mayock, they have to run the organization and coach the other 52. In retrospect, I think both men would say we probably enabled him too much, or we should have drawn a line earlier. This is ridiculous. Derek Carr, I think, more than anyone, went out of his way to try to make this work. He, all offseason, threw with Antonio Brown, reached out to him, tried to bond with him. And even as it got bad at the end, I think Derek Carr's nature is to try to make everything work out and have people get along. And I honestly think he was hurt by it. And to his credit, he channeled it into something pretty good, at least in week one.
Michael Silver of the NFL Media Group, my compadre from there in the Honda Insider Report. Let's focus in on our former colleague, Mike Mayock, a little bit here, Mike, because you just said that even Mike would think that perhaps that they let it go too long, and he's the one that is now in the crosshairs, if you will, of a Twitterverse or a 21st century attention span, where Brown, in the span of 4 hours, went from a complete cast-off and loser of $31 million guaranteed dollars to a patriot that was being lauded as the missing piece within a span of one afternoon. Mike is being Mike's being criticized for that all-in, all-out stuff as alienating Antonio Brown, and that he shouldn't have done that. Knowing what you know from behind the scenes, how do you take that criticism of Mike?
Well, first of all, Mike was, as you know, great at what he did at NFL Network and universally respected in our world. Didn't have to leave. Was wooed by John Gruden to take that job, and both he and John knew the deal. John runs everything, but Mike was going to be his top personnel guy with the GM title. But Mike's a very headstrong guy and, someone who I know reveres Bill Belichick and likes the way he does things. And so I think his inclination is to be an authoritarian and be no nonsense, which I think is generally a good thing in, when you're trying to change a culture on a football team. They got to a point with Antonio Brown, probably because John is in full control, where they were trying to just think, yeah, he's being weird right now about the helmet and the feet, but let's just get him on the field because he's so good and we can get through this. And finally, I think they did the good cop, bad cop thing, which was smart and by design, and have Mike be the bad cop. But then, you can't get to a point where a player is threatening a general manager in front of everybody else in the organization and names. It's untenable in any organization. So, I'm sure Mike, if he were in full control, would have drawn a line much earlier. But, yeah, people who are saying, well, now he's the missing piece, now it's all good, there's no way it works out in New England unless, as I said before, he was just pulling a con the whole time, which I find really hard to believe. I think what's much more likely to happen is Bill Belichick, who absolutely is going to draw a line at some point, and significantly Tom Brady, who wants his receivers to be where they're supposed to be. And we know Antonio Brown, has a penchant for freelancing that worked out pretty well in Pittsburgh. I think those guys are going to say, hey, dude, we don't do it this way here. We can't. And we're now asking ourselves to imagine that Antonio Brown is going to respond to that by saying, okay, coach, okay, Tom, I'll fall in line, rather than say surreptitiously posting a phone call on his Instagram or a fine letter or, song lyrics invoking the devil that seemed to point to his general manager. I give this 4 weeks.
Michael Silver, you give it 4 weeks? Because it looks like, again, Belichick is doing his usual removal of the oxygen from a flammable situation, and Brady's taking him in, and they're selfie buddies, and Game 1 is going to be in Miami, where we all know Miami is not on the same level, and then Game 3 is home against the Jets. I mean, where does the blow up happen? Right?
But if you were Antonio Brown and you just wanted to wear whatever helmet you wanted and do whatever you wanted and come and go as you pleased and, just not ever have anyone question you or find you, why would you want to leave Oakland and $31 million guaranteed to go there just to win a couple more games? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me either. So, yeah, okay, maybe now Bill's going to, pull some great thing. But, again, we're trying to imagine a world where Antonio Brown can flip that switch. Nothing about how he's acting or has acted suggests to me that he can. So I would just say to all of them, vaya con Dios, and be careful, because they've done something that is incredible for 2 decades that, seems inconceivable. And there have been times, like after the Malcolm Butler benching a couple of years ago with the Super Bowl, where it seemed like this is all finally going to end. You've got a 42-year-old quarterback whose greatness is one of the pillars of this, 42, who, by the way, is going to be a free agent after this season. It seems like he wanted it to be that way. And Gronk is gone. Josh Gordon is one mistake or, I guess he stepped away on his own technically last time, but Josh Gordon could be gone at any moment, and now you're putting Antonio Brown in the room. I think we may look back and say, how did this all unravel? I don't think the Antonio Brown signing is going to age well in history.
Last question for you, Michael Silver, is our poll question. Ask it of him, Chris Brockman. Go for it, please.
Yeah, Mike, after week 1, which team should be most concerned? Bears, Browns, Falcons, Steelers.
such a tough one because I did pick the Browns to win the AFC. So, I took a gut punch there, but they have so much talent. I'll stick with them. By the way, curious that the Miami Dolphins are not on there. I had such high hopes for them going into the season.
Right.
And,
oh, my
yeah,
gosh.
no, Rich, I agree with you. I thought, Atlanta, they were up 28-3 in the Super Bowl a few years ago and looked like they were about to throw a parade. That unraveled. They got back to the playoffs the next year and came very close to beating the Eagles, and then the Eagles won it all. Last year was a step back, but they had injuries to blame. They made some changes after the season, pretty big organizational changes, though they kept the coach and GM and quarterback. There's a lot of pressure there. And for them to come out, I could see them losing at Minnesota, but to come out and be down, that much, that early, and never really be competitive, that concerns me.
It does too. They're home for Philly on Sunday night, at Indiana, Indianapolis, home for Tennessee, at Houston. I mean,
Wow.
I'm not. I'm a little concerned right there. Thanks for the call, Mike. Drive safe. Great stuff out of you. Week one. We'll chat down the line.
Thanks a lot, Rich. I appreciate it.
You got it. At Mike Silver is how you could follow him on Twitter.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.